everybody. Welcome to SALT. We are pumped to see you, and pumped that there's not 100 feet of snow on the ground anymore. I'd love to invite you all just to stand up and join us in worship.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Salt Company. My name is John. I serve with Salt Company here at CSU in Front Range, and we're just excited to be back. If you guys don't know, we missed last week because of a small snowstorm called Snowmageddon. How many of you guys, just show of hands, were snowed in for multiple days? Okay, yeah, not the only one. I was losing hope. I would go on a little walk, see all the main roads paved, and then look at my driveway and be like, there's no way in heck for the next year I'm getting out of here. So just happy to have some clear roads and be back with you guys tonight, but also just be calling our hearts to worship. So the next song we'll be singing is called In Christ Alone. And the first verse goes like this. It says, no guilt in life, no shame, no fear in death, for that is the power of Christ in me. And what I want to just be real with tonight, guys, is a lot of you are probably coming in with heavy hearts, maybe some fear and confusion with just what's been going on in our world with the shootings in Atlanta, and even last night hitting really close to home in Boulder, I think it's normal for us to be coming in just saddened and fearful of what's going on. And I just want to acknowledge that fear, but I also want to point us to Scripture. So Isaiah 41:10 says this. It says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Guys, that's the God we serve. The God that says, "I am with you," and that promises to strengthen us, to help us, and to uphold us in the midst of our fear, in the midst of our anxiety, in the midst of confusion, whatever we're going through, we can take those to God. So let's continue worshiping Him together tonight.
Solid ground, firm through the fiercest All right, you guys can grab a seat. Most unexpected day. Someone said flying over to Paris, right? London, and the bank canceled all of her cards, / they didn't work, so that kind of sucks. Or when COVID hit. That's actually a really good answer. I'll never forget, like, you kind of never forget when, like, major events in the world, like world history happened. Like, you remember the place, what it smelled like. Yeah, it's crazy. So, for me, if I had to answer that question, I'd have to probably say, and my fiance's not here, so I don't have to, like, include her in this. Like, I would honestly say it's probably the day I met her. All right, she's not here. I don't have to say that. It was very unexpected in how we met, okay? We're on that vision trip for City Light Fort Collins. It was crazy. But before Rachel, I would say the most unexpected day that I had was when I was with my best friends in probably my favorite place on earth, which it might not mean a ton to you, but I call it Memorial Stadium on a Saturday in the fall, watching the Huskers play football, okay? And so this is actually, someone booed? Wow, okay, that's where we're going tonight. But I'll never forget the moment because it was our first year in the Big Ten, and we're playing the Ohio State University, okay? Ooh, yeah, don't like him, okay? But unexpectedly, by the middle of the third quarter, we found ourselves down 27-3. Not a great game. But out of nowhere, in that moment, it literally started to rain. And I'm not just talking like little drizzle. I'm talking within 30 seconds, we're all drenched. And so me and my buddies, we're trying to figure out, do we stay? Do we go? We're like, no, we stay. We're not fair weather fans. Like, we've got to see this to the end. And as we made that commitment, like, we literally made a pact right then and there, like, hey, doesn't matter if we lose by like another 30 points. We're going to see this to the end. We started to come back, okay? We scored a touchdown. Then all of a sudden, we got a turnover, scored another touchdown. And then we scored another touchdown, okay? And so now we're only like 4 points away from tying them. And then out of nowhere, there's this miracle play where our defensive back, Levante David, ever heard of him? Okay, NFL, that's awesome. He got a Super Bowl ring this year. He literally grabs the ball out of the offensive player's hands and just is done. We get the ball back. He goes down. We score with a couple seconds left on the clock, and it was absolutely insane. I actually have a photo coming up. That's me and my buddies. When we got out of the stadium, our phones were blowing up because we were on ESPN for like a solid minute. There's me. You can't really see me. Grainy picture, all right? That's before iPhones, all right? BlackBerry Pearl took that photo, okay? Not great. And so it was completely unexpected that we'd come back and win, that we'd be part of this story of watching the Huskers' biggest comeback in history. But not only that, I made it onto television, all right? ESPN, it was incredible. But that actually wasn't the most insane part of my day. See, as we started to walk back to our cars, we get out of the gates at Memorial Stadium, we're walking on the streets, and we start to hear some like loud yelling happening. And so naturally, as college students, we're like, we're going to check this out. Like, we need to see what's going on. And we start to notice that there's two groups of people yelling at each other. You've got some Husker students, and you got some Ohio State students who made the drive. And they're yelling, going back and forth. And then out of nowhere, someone throws a bottle, all right? You know where this is heading, okay? An all-out brawl happened, all right? I'm talking like, it felt like I was watching the movie Gladiator in that moment. And college students going at it. It was nuts. And I'm sitting there like a bystander, kind of frozen, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know if I should call someone. I don't know if I should, like, join in. I'm actually just going to sit here and just watch passively. This is great. And so as this proceeded, these two cops on bikes, like massive dudes, like, I don't know how those tires are supporting you, come crawling, like running in on these bikes. Like, this one dude literally jumped off his bike into the pile, starts pulling out zip ties and arresting people. And I'll never forget this moment because as I like watched this scene unfold and kind of like walked away, there's this one student, this one Husker kid that I saw, and I looked in his eyes and he made eye contact with me. And I started to think to myself, like, dude, when you woke up this morning, like, what were you thinking? Like, you're thinking, yeah, I might, go watch the Huskers at this sporting event, maybe see them win, and, if I'm feeling in the mood, maybe I'll get into a fight and maybe I'll go to jail. Like, what were you thinking? Like, this escalated so quickly. And so I share that story with you tonight because it's kind of funny, and it was a really exciting thing to witness as a student. But I also share it because in that moment, something that was supposed to be a fun, us versus them, turned into very quickly an ugly us versus them. And so let me ask you this. Why do you think I mentioned that here tonight? Well, first off, it's not because I think that you guys are going to go to a sporting event and get into fights, all right? John, I might be actually worried about a little bit, okay? LeBron's out. I don't know how he's doing with that right now, okay? That's his team. That's his person, all right? But here's the reality. We currently live in a culture where there's a lot of outrage. Interesting, if you just type that word outrage into Google News, you're instantly going to get thousands of articles, headlines, news articles from recent current events that are so crazy and have a huge spectrum to them. Like right now, if you type that in, you want to know what pops up? Yeah, the Colorado shooting, outrage. Right beneath that, people outraged that Mr. Potato Head dropped the Mr. from his name. Below that, some gas tank thing fell over off the interstate and it was closed for 2 days. People were not happy about that. A wide variety of outrage when it comes to what's going on in our culture. And so here's what news people do. They latch onto that word because they know that there's a ton of energy and excitement produced when you can get a group of people to mock, to be angry at another group of people. Like, there's power in this us versus them. Like, our culture feeds in to this narrative. And you see it all around us, right? Just had a political election. Democrats versus Republicans. Pro-life, pro-choice. Gun rights, gun restrictions. That's probably going to be a huge topic that comes up in the next couple weeks. Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. LGBTQ versus evangelicalism, right? CrossFit people versus regular gym people. Like, that's a real one. It happens. Country music lovers versus people with taste. Hey, all right, probably creating some outrage in some of your hearts tonight. What's crazy is some of those things are actually real issues. Like real points of disagreement that need to be discussed. But often the issues and the resolutions get buried in this intensity of anger and hate, name-calling, and violence. And you see that in our culture today. If you just pop onto Facebook for a little bit and you read news articles and you read the discussions going on, you see it, us versus them, consistently and constantly. Here's the reality. When we give in, as followers of Christ, when we give in to this us versus them mentality, it doesn't solve anything. All it does is it escalates the ugliness. Like, there has to be a better way. Like, I believe there is a better way, and I think Jesus tonight, as we move to Luke chapter 19, is actually going to show us a better way to reach. And so one of the reasons, there's 2 reasons why I wanted to do this series. First off, I wanted people who felt like they're on the outside. People who are far away from God, far away from church, far away from religious people. I wanted them to hear that the message of Jesus is actually for them. For them. For the marginalized, for the person who feels far away from God. That not only is he interested in you, it's why he came. That's his story. That's his message. But secondly, the reason I wanted to do this whole series is that also for the Christian, that they could see in Jesus, that they could see in him, hey, here's how we actually engage people we profoundly disagree with. People that are on the other side of the aisle on social issues, on political issues, or even religious or theological issues. How do we treat the other? And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to see Jesus actually give us a blueprint of how to care for those that we might profoundly disagree with on a variety of issues. And so if you guys have a Bible, it's also going to be on the screen behind me. Go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 19. We're going to be in verses 1 through 10 here tonight. And so what Luke does as we start off is he just begins to set the stage. All right, he says, he, meaning Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through. And so you have to know that Jesus was onto his final destination to Jerusalem. And as he's moving in that direction, he's moving towards the cross. In a couple weeks, we're going to celebrate Easter. That's the whole focal point of Christianity. It's going to be fun. Would love to have you guys join us on Easter Sunday. If you don't have a church home, we're meeting over at the Bridge Church, just literally a couple blocks away at 9:30 a.m. But Jesus is moving towards the cross. He's moving towards Jerusalem. And as he does, his disciples are following him. Okay, not just the 12, but there's a lot of other people too that are part of that. And there's hundreds of other people that would probably consider themselves fans or benefactors of Jesus and his miracles, maybe just trying to get something from him. And then you have a bunch of other people who are just like, hey, there's a lot of people going with this dude. I'm going to start selling some stuff, okay? And so you have this huge crowd that's kind of moving. And so we get to this text, and Luke says that he goes through a town, passing through. Okay, it wasn't the plan to stop there, is what it kind of seems like at first. And so he passes through, and in verse 2, as he does, we're introduced to a main character here. And so in verse 2 it says, "And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, and he was a chief tax collector and was rich." If you're taking notes, just underline chief, tax collector, rich. It's kind of really important. Like those two descriptor words of Zacchaeus might not mean much to you, but if we were to kind of put onto a lens for Jewish culture and what was going on, a historical lens, that would have guaranteed two things instantly that we would know about this person. That number one, Zacchaeus was well known. And number two, he was very disliked. He was probably the most disliked person in this town. So most famous and also most disliked. And here's the reason for that. He was someone that was actually taking advantage of the helpless state of his own people for his own financial benefit. Okay, so not a good guy. If you were a Jewish person in this time, and if they had Harry Potter, okay, they'd be considering him to Voldemort, all right? That's the contextual lens that we would probably understand today. And so as we come to this text, you have to know that Zacchaeus is not a sympathetic character. Okay, the guy's basically putting up this huge banner saying, hey, man, I care more about myself and how I can benefit than I do about you. And so for the culture of that day, you want to know what the response is? Like, they can't stop him from doing this. Like, it's government sanctioned, all right? He's just taking from us whatever he wants. The only way that they can really hurt him is emotionally. And so they start to shun him, all right? Now, if you grew up with siblings, you want to know what the best tactic is to get your brothers to knock it off? You shun them, all right? You hurt them emotionally, like shunned, unshunned, I hate you, shunned. It works really well. I mean, that's what they did to Zacchaeus here. They completely shunned him. They pushed him away. They wouldn't have conversation with them. They wouldn't invite them in. Like on the big Jewish holidays and how they would celebrate, like Passover, no one would invite him. No one would join him. No one would go to his house. That's where he's at. And what I find so interesting about this, if you look at verse 3, we find out something crazy. Crazy. It says this. It says, he was seeking to see who Jesus was. Okay, this guy is on the outside of religious circles. He doesn't care about the religious community and what's going on, but yet he has this interest in seeking Jesus. Why do you think that is? Like, I can't tell you from this text because it obviously doesn't tell us, but at the same time, we know. It's obvious to us that he at least knows about Jesus, or at least he's heard about Jesus. Okay, maybe he's heard about like the miracles that Jesus has done, and so he kind of just wants to like show up and see Jesus show off and do something crazy. Because what else is there to do at this time, all right? There's no Netflix, right? Or secondly, maybe he's actually heard about this message that Jesus has talked about a God that doesn't condemn, a God that doesn't move in wrath, but actually a God who moves towards you with mercy and forgiveness and grace, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done. I'd like to think that that's the thing that drew Zacchaeus in. Knowing, man, I'm on the outsides. I'm on the margins of my own town named Jericho. And here's this guy coming through with this crazy message. Maybe that message could be for me too. Even though we're not sure why he's seeking Jesus, notice that you don't seek if you're satisfied, right? If you're satisfied, you don't seek. If you're full, all right, you're not seeking more food. If you are, you got some problems, right? Seeking assumes lacking, right? If you're seeking something, that means there's some lack in your life that's going on. And so here's what we know about Zacchaeus. We know he has money. We know he has somewhat of fame. We know he's got power, but we also know that he's not satisfied, that those things aren't enough. And so my first point tonight for followers of Jesus interacting with others in our life is this: we need to avoid making assumptions. We need to avoid making assumptions about the others and what's going on in their life, about what's going on inside their mind and inside their hearts. And so just for a moment here, I want you to think about all the famous people that you know. Celebrities, maybe CEOs, all right, maybe even politically, maybe even people that you follow that are popular on Twitter or Instagram. Take all of those people and just combine them for a second. Like, did you know that people who have fame, who have amassed a lot of wealth, are 6 times more likely in our society today to struggle with depression and suicidal ideation? It's true. It's crazy. And that may surprise you, but it's a reality that we face within this culture. Because there can be a sense of emptiness even in the midst of abundance. And I would probably say it's amplified. Like, for you probably have people across your dorm, across your apartment complex where you've kind of made the assumption like, man, I don't really want to have a conversation. Like, I can kind of see the life or the lifestyle that they're living. Like, I really don't want to tell them that I'm a Christian. I really don't want to probably even have a conversation because we're just not going to agree on a lot of things. But the truth is, you don't know what their answer is going to be. You don't know what's going on inside their hearts. Like, don't assume. Don't assume. Avoid assumptions. See, that's what Jesus did here in this text. Like, he knows Zacchaeus is not a good dude. He knows that he could easily walked up to Zacchaeus and condemn him for all the things that he's doing wrong. But instead, he comes towards him because he sees that Zacchaeus is seeking. Zacchaeus is seeking because he knows he's lacking. And he's actually got a pretty big problem. Look back at verse 3. The rest of it says this: but on the account of the crowd, he could not, because he was small in stature. And really, he's got 2 problems. Number 1, it's a big crowd. Number 2, he's a short dude. All right? Now, tall people like us, we don't really struggle with those things, all right? But I know short people really struggle. Wow, I can't even get that across without even, I'm kidding. Actually, so last month I was down over at Cedar Rapids. I got the opportunity to preach to the Salt Company there. And we were having breakfast. It's our first morning there. We flew in late at night the night before. And I met one of their staff members. And as we're eating breakfast, he's like, dude, I just have to be really, really honest with you. I saw your photo. And I honestly thought you were 6'4", like 220. I thought you were a football player. And I'm like, wow, I mean, thank you. I don't know how to respond to this. This is what you get, all right? 5'8", 155, okay? There you go. Are you happy? You've really kind of added a lot of confidence for me to preach at your Salt Company tonight. I'm feeling really great about it. Thank you for that. No, back to the text here. he's trying to see Jesus, and he physically can't. There's this huge crowd. He's short. Like, actually, a lot of scholars think that he was a dwarf. So he's got that going for him. But here's the cool thing. One of the upsides about being a small dude like me is that it makes you really resourceful, all right? You become really savvy. You become really scrappy. You start to learn some tricks and some trades to really kind of help you out in situations like this. And that's what he does. If you look at verse 4, like, he's smart. Look at this. So he ran on ahead, all right? He sees where this is going, and he decides, I'm going to climb up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. All right, this dude's smart. He's like, I need a better vantage point. Here's where the crowd is going. Here's how they're going to move through. Boom, sycamore tree. If you've ever seen a sycamore tree, it's perfect for small dudes. Low-hanging branches, they're big. You climb up, you're good to go. Pretty sturdy, pretty strong. You're good. And so it's great for little guys to climb. All right, he's excited about that. But let me ask you this on a more serious note. Why does he get into the tree? Think about this. No one else is in the tree. It's just Zacchaeus. No one else is climbing up into trees. It's just Zacchaeus. All right? I think the reality is he climbs up that tree in complete humility, complete vulnerability. It's a statement of vulnerability that he's making to climb up. A statement, man, I'm going to risk being made fun of. I'm going to risk being rejected. I'm the guy that everybody knows and everybody hates, and I'm going to scamper up this tree because I know I need some answers that no one can give me. Like, there's something noble about what Zacchaeus is doing there. Like, as much of a mess as he is as a human being, there's humility, there's vulnerability. Like, he's willing to open himself up to ridicule. Like, the crowd coming around as Jesus kind of approaches him, like, what's Zacchaeus doing up there? Why is Jesus walking towards him? Or maybe he's got friends, and when he gets out of that tree, he's going back, and the other tax collectors ask him, like, dude, why are you hanging out with Jesus? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, he's opening himself up to that. And so let me just acknowledge that for some of us here in this room, that's probably where you are. All right? If you've come here on Tuesday nights consistently, there's probably some people asking questions like, what's Salt Company? I don't get it. Salt Company? Do they make salt? I don't understand. Why do you keep going there? Oh, you sing worship songs and you hear a gospel-centered message? Cool. Why are you getting all religious on us? Like, I'm kind of confused. Hey, can I just encourage you from this passage that if that's where you're at, that's actually what Jesus is commending here. Entering into a posture of humility and vulnerability, seeking Jesus regardless of the cost. Regardless. When you're humble, when you're vulnerable, when you're seeking, Jesus commends that. And so Zacchaeus gets up in that tree because he knows that he doesn't have all the answers. He knows that no one else can give him those answers. But what Jesus points out here in this passage is that there's something really good about a seeking, vulnerable heart, even though they might seem really far off from God. And so if that's you tonight, I just want to commend you. Even you might feel far from God, you might feel really far from this whole Jesus thing and what he's done for you, but the passage is actually commending you in where you sit tonight. And I also want you to notice too, like Zacchaeus is not an insider here. He's not trying to become an insider. He's not trying to become a disciple. Like if that were true, he'd be pushing through the crowd, trying to get close to Jesus, to hear his words, to understand him, to walk with him, to follow him all the way to Jerusalem. But that's not his actual posture. Zacchaeus just wants to get up in a tree from afar and maybe see Jesus. That's it. And that's when Jesus begins to do something crazy. Look at verse 5. It says, when Jesus came to this place, he looked up and he said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. Okay, Jesus doesn't just move by Zacchaeus, all right? He doesn't just kind of eye him in the tree and ask, like, what's the short dude doing up in the tree? Like, he actually walks towards him. He looks up at him, and he says his name. And we don't know how Jesus knew his name. There's a lot of variety that scholars think. But by just saying his name, there's this eye-catching statement that Zacchaeus gets. It's Jesus saying, I know who you are. I know what you are, Zacchaeus. I know what you've been to this community. I know what you've experienced in this community and lack thereof. Like, I know that you're not even a part of this crowd. You want probably nothing to do with these people that are following me. I know what you've done. I know what that's cost. Like, I know you, Zacchaeus, but I'm still coming towards you. And I'm coming towards you with a purpose. Zacchaeus, you're why I'm here. One word, just his name. That's what Zacchaeus probably got in that moment. I love that Jesus' invitation here is immediate. It's absolutely immediate. He says, hurry up and come down. He doesn't say, hey, let's grab coffee sometime. Like how many times have you met your neighbor or maybe someone on campus and you're like, man, I should really hang out with that guy. Hey, let's grab coffee sometime. And it doesn't happen. See, Jesus moved towards him with an invitation that was immediate. He says, hey, I understand. I get it. I see that you're seeking me. I know who you are. Get down. We're going to your house. I want to connect with you. I want to connect with you. But not only that, do you notice that what he says there is actually out of necessity? Like look at the words that Jesus uses. I must be at your house. Why do you think Zacchaeus' house is where he needs to be? Like, there's plenty of other places for him to go. Like, they could have gone to a synagogue or a church. But he walks up to the most hated guy. All right, the crowd is going to despise this in a couple seconds. But he says, I have to stay at your house. Not want to, have to. Why? Jesus is making a statement. You're why I've come. You are why I've come. And so that's our second point. As followers of Jesus, we, number one, avoid making assumption about what's going on in the other's hearts. But number two, we begin to initiate conversation with them. We initiate conversation. Zacchaeus was on the outside. Jesus comes to him. He initiates conversation, relationship. And what I love about what Jesus shows us is as he initiates conversation, he doesn't come out with a sermon on hell. All right? He doesn't condemn Zacchaeus in his sin. Like, he knows everything that Zacchaeus has done. He doesn't do any of that. No, he leads with an invitation to a meal. He leads with an invitation to get to know him, to sit down with him, to see his life, to do life with him. And so, guys, I just want to challenge you. Like, for those of you in the room who say, yes, like, I understand who Jesus is. I understand what he's done for me. Like, I want to follow him. Like, have you ever invited someone into your home and said, hey, I don't want anything from you. I just want to know you. I want to love you. I want to see you be a part of my life. And I'm not just talking about friends. I'm not talking about family members. I'm talking about the people you disagree with. Like the people where it seems like you almost have like nothing in common with other than that the fact that you're sucking the same air. That's it. People like that. Like, have you ever asked someone like that over because you simply love them because God does? Back in college, I had this small group leader. Part of this awesome college ministry dramatically changed my life. They shared the gospel with me for the first time. And one of my very first leaders, like the first time I met him, was just super honest with me. He's telling this story to our group. And he met Jesus in college. He was in a fraternity. As he met Jesus, he recognized that he just struggled with alcohol. Like, he just straight up, flat out said, man, I'm an alcoholic. And he couldn't find any margin for that, but he still had to, like, technically attend these fraternity parties. And he was just honest with me. He's like, man, I've got to cut this out completely from my life. And so he just made a commitment and a covenant to stop drinking alcohol altogether. It was awesome. But there was a problem because he would go to these fraternity parties, and he just decided, you know what, I'm just going to carry around and drink a gallon of orange juice the entire time, all right? so that people know, number one, I'm not drinking, but number two, I've got something to drink, and people aren't going to offer me anything because they know that I'm the OJ guy. All right, that's what he was kind of known for. It was weird. He's telling this story. I'm like, dude, yeah, he should got a better haircut. I don't know. All right, crazy. But everyone there knows that he's not drinking. Every single time. And so a semester goes on, and he begins to tell us another story. And he's like, dude, this is crazy. Like, you guys won't believe what happened. Like, I'm walking around, I'm not drinking. And towards the end of the night, this dude in my fraternity, he's a really big dude. We don't get along. Like, when we cross each other's path, we go the other way. We just have very, very competing personalities. But out of nowhere, towards the end of one of these parties, he comes up to me, and he's like this big dude. Big dude. And he sticks out his hand with a beer, and he says, hey, man, you want a beer? And my buddy just like, he's like, dude, no. Like, what? Like, you know. And out of nowhere, he drops the beer, grabs my small group leader, hulks out on him a little bit, okay? He tells the story, he's like, dude ripped through his shirt, all right? Button-up shirt, started ripping. Shoves him up against the wall and looks at him and just very, very angrily tells him, I know you don't want a beer. I know that's not what you want. But what I want to know is why you've never asked me if I wanted orange juice. And we're like, okay, cool. What's the moral of the story? That's hilarious. That's funny. But I'll never forget it. Because my small group leader sat there and he's like, man, I failed. Like, do you hear what that guy was really saying? Like, underneath the surface, yeah, he might have been drunk, but do you hear what he was saying? He was basically saying, hey, I know who you are. I know that you're a Christian, all right? And I know that you're a Christian because you don't do what I do. But you don't invite me to do what you do. Okay, that was the implication underneath the surface. That was the piercing on the mind for my small group leader's heart in that moment. Of saying, man, they know what I'm against, but they don't know what I'm inviting them into. They know what I'm against, but they don't know that I myself invite them in. Like, when you look at your life, when you look at the people that you get to interact with, the people that you get across, the people that you have very, very little in common with, they might know that you're Christian. Maybe. Take a step further. They might even know what you're against. But most importantly, do they know you're inviting them in? That's what this passage is showing us. Do they know that you're actually inviting them in? Notice that Jesus doesn't invite Zacchaeus to a synagogue. He doesn't invite Zacchaeus to a church. They go to his house. And some of you guys, you have people around you in your dorms, in your apartments, as you go to class, as you go to work, and maybe you invite them to SALT. I hope you do. Maybe you invite them to church on Sunday. I hope you do. Those are all good things. But just because they're not interested in coming to Salt Company, just because they're not interested in coming to church, doesn't mean that your first priority should be to invite them to lunch or a meal or some other time to let them know that you're there. To let them know that you're inviting them in regardless of how far away they seem from God. Jesus doesn't come pounding in with a sermon. He comes pounding in with a simple invitation to just get to know him. And that should be our response as well, too. Like, if you look at verse 6, it says this about Zacchaeus' response. He hurried down, he came down, and he received him joyfully. All right, he's thinking in his mind, like, man, you want to come to my house, Jesus? No one comes to my house. Like, no one even actually talks to me. You're talking to me right now? You want to spend time with me? Like, are you serious? Jesus is saying, yes, Zacchaeus, I'm serious. I want to spend time with you. That's the heart of Jesus. And that's the heart of the people of Christ. And there's people out there that would gladly respond to that message if we just simply invited them into a simple conversation, a simple time, a simple opportunity. And so how can we do this? Why would we do this? I think it's because we tonight can understand something the crowd doesn't. Like look at verse 7. Look at what the crowd doesn't understand about this interaction. It says, when they saw it, they grumbled. All right, when they saw this interaction that Jesus had with this outcast, they grumbled. And then they said, he has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. All right, see, they made an assumption that is far from the heart of God. They grumbled and they are making an assumption that is far from the heart of God. What's that assumption? That a person like Zacchaeus isn't worthy of the gospel of Jesus. That's the assumption that they're making. And that's not the gospel, right? The good news of the gospel is that no one is worthy. No one. The people who Jesus moved towards are those who admit that they're in need, right? Like it's all over Scripture. If you just even dive into the Gospel of Luke over and over and over again, it's Jesus moving towards people who are like, yeah, I got nothing going for me. Like there's nowhere else for me to turn. I'm going to admit my need. I'm not worthy. Boom, Jesus moves towards them. He sees Zacchaeus' vulnerability and he says, I'm going to hang with you. Why? Because Jesus understands what we're all meant to understand as believers. And that's my last point tonight. As we move towards others, it's simply this. It's love that precedes life change. It's love that precedes life change, not the other way around. The gospel isn't, hey, well, you know what, clean up your acts. Maybe if you do these things, then Jesus moves towards you. That's not it. No, the gospel is while we were still enemies, Christ died for us, amen? While we were lost, Christ sought after us. While we were far off, he continued to move towards us. That's the message of God. Now, yes, we're all sinners. But a sinner doesn't make you ineligible to my grace. It actually makes you the perfect and ideal candidate of it. And I know, Zacchaeus, that you know this. And I know that when I come to your house, you're going to experience my love. And it's out of that love that your life is going to change. Right? We all know this. And what's crazy, if you just take some popular movies currently. Anybody in here seen Raya and the Last Dragon? Ooh, hey, my dude, let's go, Jalen. Come on. It's a great movie, right? They live in this broken world. All right, so much division, so much chaos, right? Everything's like an argument and a disagreement. It's like almost an allusion to our culture right now. But I'm going to ask you, how does it get fixed? And I'll try to share the answer because most of you haven't seen it. I don't want to ruin it for you. How does it get fixed? Someone, I'm not going to tell you who, someone sacrifices their life for the many. Someone sacrifices their life for the many. Okay, who's seen Frozen? Thank you, okay? Probably a lot more people. Guys, I know you've seen Frozen. Don't lie. It's a good movie. It's a really good movie. All right? So let me ask you this. How do you keep someone who's a destructive force from ruining the community? Oh, okay. Yep, that works. That's great. Yep. Well, in the movie, they start and they begin with a sword. They think, oh, we need to kill Elsa with a sword. Hans tries to kill Elsa with a sword. What stops that? What fixes it? Love. Thank you, Sydney. Great. Awesome. Right? Someone sacrificing their life for someone else fixes the problem. All right? As Olaf says, it's love that thaws a frozen heart. Pretty good line. Pretty good quote. Where do you think Disney comes up with this? Like, where does Disney come up with these ideas that kind of, I'm going to be honest, I cried at both those movies, all right? I teared up. Maybe not cried, but teared up. All right, that sounds like a better phrasing for a dude. I teared up. Okay, guys, I didn't cry. I teared up. Where do you think Disney got those messages that kind of tug on our heartstrings? They ripped it from Jesus. It's the greatest story ever told. And these companies know it's the greatest story ever told. So they wrap it up in a really cool animated movie and tell it a little bit differently. But that story means a ton. Because it's the only way that a broken world like ours with so much division, so much chaos, and so much violence can actually be restored. One man, fully God, given his life for unworthy people who recognize how unworthy they truly are and submit their life over to him, saying, Jesus, I have nothing to offer, but I know you're still better. That's it. That's it. And Zacchaeus gets that. And so Jesus comes to his house. He spends time with him. He's saying, Zacchaeus, I know that you're a mess. I'm aware of that, but I'm moving towards you, knowing that love precedes life change. And you start to see Zacchaeus' life change. Like, look at verse 8. All right, he starts to see God's love for him, that Jesus would move towards him. They're sitting down. And he stands up, and he said to the Lord, behold, Lord, half of everything I have, half my goods I give to the poor. And if I've defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. All right? It was considered generous in that culture just to give 20%. Like crazy, crazy generous. To give 50% of everything he had is just downright insane. Doesn't make any sense. That's only the response of someone who actually is looking the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords in the face. That's the only way to explain this text. All right, Zacchaeus is saying, man, I once was a taker. Now I want to be a giver. I once was just in this for my needs and my wants, and now I'm in it to take care of whoever has a need. That's what I'm going to be about. Like, that's the power of the gospel of Christ completely changing this man's life. And what's crazy is it mentions if he's defrauded anyone. The statement there, he knows he's defrauded some people. And he's saying, you know what, I'm going to repay that back fourfold. If you understand Old Testament law, you probably don't, because I don't either, but I looked it up. To repay something back fourfold is the highest penalty that you could pay within the law of the Old Testament. And so he takes this to the extreme. He's saying, Jesus, I look at my old life. That's not who I am anymore. You've done something in me. I'm making this change. And so boom, 50% and a bunch of others for the people that I've defrauded. That only happens because he recognizes truly deep down in his heart God's love for him. But then look at Jesus' response to his life change. This is incredible. Verse 9. It says, today salvation has come to this house, since he is also a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. So let me ask you this question. Does salvation come because this guy gave up his stuff? No. No. That stuff is just a mark of his salvation, that it has come. Jesus is saying, for the Son of Man, nothing that this guy did, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. It's the Son of Man who does the seeking. It's the Son of Man who does the saving. So that when Jesus moves towards us in love, when the people of Jesus move towards others that we profoundly disagree with, others that we know are a long way off, just like we once were, when the gospel comes, God seeks us and Jesus saves us. It's love that precedes life change. And the life change comes when we actually embrace his love. Like it does. Like that's my story. That's probably some of your stories here in this room tonight. Like when Jesus gets a hold of your life, things just start to transform naturally. Maybe slowly over time, but they begin to transform. Like I look back at my life, the reason that I'm in college ministry today is because I was far off from God. Like I went to church every single Sunday. I went to a college ministry every single Thursday night, but I was still far from God, living a dual life, doing all the right Christian things, but then doing whatever I wanted on the weekends. And it wasn't until I got to the low point of my life that someone actually stepped in and firmly shared truth and shared the gospel with me in that moment that completely changed my life. Like I am in college ministry because I don't want other college students to run towards things of the world that aren't satisfying, that aren't fulfilling, that have nothing to give except suck the life from you. And if I can save any college student from that and to see them walk with Jesus, it's the greatest thing that I could give my life to. That's why I'm in college ministry. And the reason I do that, because that's what Jesus does. That's the business that he's in. And as followers of Christ, that's the business that we're all in. That we know as followers, that we firmly and confidently believe that we can actually help make a difference in the lives of others around us that we profoundly disagree with. People we profoundly disagree with politically, socially, maybe even in terms of theology. People that still want to move towards. Why? Because we actually believe that the Son of God we serve saves. Amen? That we truly believe that it's his love that changes people, and we are actually the witness, we are the testimony that moves towards that. And so I know personally that I can move into a broken world with confidence, not seeing people as potential objects of my wrath or my judgment, but actually seeing people who I profoundly disagree with as potential recipients of his grace. And so I just want to challenge you guys, if you're following Jesus, if you're moving towards him tonight, can I just ask you, can you do that? Can you look out at the world, at people you profoundly disagree with, people who you look at and say, man, we have absolutely nothing in common, the things that you do, the things that you say, I just kind of want to separate. I don't even want to hear those things. It's just hard for me to hear. Can you still walk towards them? Can you believe that they're much more than objects of someone's wrath or judgment, and much more potential people and potential recipients of God's grace? Because that's how Jesus sees the world. Like, we look at this text, that's how he's viewing people like that in our culture. And that's how we are supposed to view them too. Look, this passage has actually been really tough for me. Because I see all these truths, I know all these truths, I sometimes believe all these truths. But if I'm just being honest, man, I'm a quadruplet. I've got two brothers that are just running away from God, don't even want to have conversations about God. It's just really hard, like as a minister of the gospel, as a witness to what Jesus has done in my life, as I've tried to share that with them, they are just so opposed to even talking about him. And I see the hurt, I see the pain, I see the shame and the guilt that kind of adds up in their life. And it's difficult. And it's tough for me. I'm like, God, yes, I know that you can save them. I know that you can do that. But sometimes I don't know if you can. I begin to doubt. And so if I'm just being honest, this is hard. This is difficult. And I'm sure that each of us in this room have someone that probably came to mind as we think about this word other or outsider. Maybe someone that we have close proximity to. Someone that we know just doesn't want to hear or have a conversation about who Christ is or what he's done for us or maybe what he's doing currently in us. But can I just tell you, don't lose hope? Don't lose hope. The only reason we're in this room tonight is 2,000 years ago, Christ died on a cross. That's fact. But not only did he die on a cross, he rose again. And that was the fulfillment of his word, that not only does he move and seek the outsider, but he actually saves them too. We're in here because he saves, but we're also in here because he sends. Someone was sent to you. Someone sought you out. It wasn't Christ himself, but he or her came with Christ's words. And you began to understand it. You began to live it and move towards it. And so I hold hope. I don't know how my brother's story is going to end. I don't know how that's going to shake out. I'm going to continue to press in. But I know that if I don't live out these three principles, and I have to preach this to myself, I'm going to have to tell myself every single day. Like Rachel and I, my fiance, we were just having this conversation the other day. Me and my siblings were celebrating our 30th birthday. And we're all going to hang out in San Diego. And it's going to be fun. All right, 30, let's go. But it's also going to be awkward and weird, all right? There's going to be some awkward and weird conversations, all right? These guys know what I've done for the last 6-7 years of my life in ministry, and it's just really hard because I don't want to just stop talking about it. But at the same time, I need to follow these same principles, avoiding assumptions that they don't want to hear it, avoiding assumptions that I'm going to upset them. But also, I need to initiate conversation. I need to invite them in, knowing that, hey, you might know that I'm a Christian, you might know what I'm against, but do you know that I actually invite you in? I want them to believe that. I want them to know that. And thirdly, I have to believe and I have to trust that it's love that precedes life change, right? And I know for us in this room, as Christians, if we want to see a dramatic impact in our world, a culture that begins to see life change and love and see resolve in a lot of the issues that are going on. Like as college students, you guys are going through one of the craziest seasons I've ever seen college students go through. If you can cling to these simple principles of reaching other people, being able to disagree with people in kindness, but still move towards them in love, even if you continue to disagree, knowing that you're there for them, knowing that you still invite them in, even though you don't see eye to eye on everything. Because it's Jesus that changes people. And so as the changed people of Jesus, we walk into confidence, not cower into the corner. We walk into confidence in this world saying, yes, we might disagree, but I'm going to continue to pursue you. You're not an object of my wrath. You're not an object of my judgment. You're a potential recipient of the King of Kings' grace. I believe that and I trust that. And so I'm going to move towards you and I'm going to do it with his grace for your glory, for his glory, and for your good. That's the call that we have here tonight, Salt Company. And so, guys, I just want to challenge you as we just continue to dive back into worship. May we be a people marked by these principles. It's hard to enter into conversations that are awkward and weird and you don't see eye to eye. And even when you bring up the word like, I'm a follower of Christ or I'm a Christian, like it brings up some weird, crazy connotations and people kind of want to move away from you. But at the same time, continue to initiate conversation. Let them know, hey, you might know what Christians are against. You might know what Christians are about. But do you know that Christians are actually for you? Do you know that I'm actually here for you? Do you know that I invite you in? Let me pray. Jesus, thank you that you, through your word, just give us modern illustrations and understandings of how to just interact, how to proceed in a culture like ours, a mentality of us versus them. God, I pray over this community. I pray over Colorado. I pray over this nation and this culture. We're facing just very difficult things, God. We don't see eye to eye. There's so many issues. There's so many disagreements. There's so many different thoughts. But God, I know and I pray that the only way that it can be resolved is that we just recognize that you died. You died to resolve it. And so, Jesus, as the people that know you, as the people that have been changed by you, may we just simply be followers that initiate, that don't assume what's going on in the heart of those around us, that we build simple relationships with people that we know are far off. But God, we know that we were once far off, and so we trust you. We know that you're working. We know that you're the only one that can save. God, I know that I can't save my brothers. No special words, nothing that I do could ever save them. But I know the King of Kings, and I know that you can. And so I bring them before you here tonight. God, would you use me as, yes, an instrument, but God, would you use many other people to witness the testimony that they've experienced of you too. And so, God, as we just continue to get to worship you and build in this community, may you just continue to reveal your goodness and your faithfulness and the forgiveness that you have given us tonight through your Son. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Well, amen. Let's stand and respond to that message with worship.
The King of my heart, be the
up for the worship team? All right, you guys can have a seat. Mike, that was so good. Just hearing what you're saying, that do the people in our lives, they may know that we're a Christian, they may know that our lives look differently, but are we inviting them into a relationship with Jesus? Do they feel that we're pointing out their sin? Do we feel like we're judging them? Or are we pointing them to Jesus first and letting him to transform their lives? So, Mike, that was so good, what we needed to hear. And so I would encourage all you guys, even in your friends, don't make assumptions and initiate those conversations and let God do the rest. They may see a change in your life, but they need an invite too. And they need to feel loved and cared for by you guys. We only have one announcement tonight, and Mike covered it a little bit. But Salt Company is the college ministry of City Light Church Fort Collins. And a lot of you guys in this room do come to church there, and I would just encourage all you guys in this room, come check it out. We're at the Bridge Church at 9:30 every Sunday morning, and our Easter gathering next Sunday is going to be just a great way for you guys to come and see what the church is all about, but invite your friends into it too. So 2 Sundays from now, that would just be a great way for you guys to be inviting your friends. Not making assumptions, inviting them into church. And we have coffee and donuts, so you can't really go wrong with that. But we will be back here same time, same place next week, and we'll see you guys then.
My heart just wants